Going. All right. Welcome everyone to session 6 of the Balanced Gymnast program. While this is the last live program session in our 3-month cohort, we are certainly not done together. And we're going to talk about supporting your gymnast relationship with food and body image tonight, which is incredibly important, not just as a gymnast, but life beyond the sport. And then we'll definitely talk about what's next for you guys. And then certainly have questions. And then I think we'll probably do another giveaway at the end, if that sounds good to you. So, I want to talk about what we consider, normal eating, and even I might say, quote unquote, food freedom, or just what does a healthy relationship with food look like? Because there's just a lot of nutrition noise out there, especially in this sport, that can unknowingly create distrust with food, can create dysregulation with food and with body weight. And all of that can complicate life and health post sport. And as much as we all love gymnastics, it is certainly temporary, right? And so it's our goal to always leave gymnasts, better than we found them. We'll talk about signs that you might need more support in this area, how to support positive body image, and then a little bit of a review and wrap up and what's next. So, what's normal eating, right? Like, is normal eating for an athlete that you should hate your life and everything should be grilled chicken and steamed broccoli and brown rice? And if you want to win, like, that's how you need to eat? That's what I used to think, right? Like, that's what I thought as a gymnast. A lot of us believe that certain foods will make you skinny and other foods will make you fat, but that's not actually how food works in the body, right? Like we talked about this in session 1 and 2. Your body doesn't know where the carbs, fat, and protein come from. That does not mean that there aren't differences, right? Like no one is saying that the nutrient quality and density of an apple is the same as Skittles, right? Like we're not dumb. But at the same time, some of this kind of magical thinking about food is truly what keeps people from either A, getting enough nutrition, or when they quit gymnastics, prevents them from having a really healthy relationship with food. So I think it's important for gymnasts to be able to eat all foods without guilt. Just because you eat all foods doesn't mean you eat all foods all the time. And people mishear that, right? Like people hear permission to eat the sweets and treats. They hear food freedom and they immediately hear, oh, it's an all out binge fest on cookies and candy and soda. And that's not it at all. In fact, when you have a healthy relationship with food, it makes the fun foods not a big deal to where you can enjoy the healthy, nutritious things and enjoy how that makes your body feel, but also still eat the things that are social and cultural and emotional. And so I think this is a big part of what we're teaching our gymnasts. And I think it's also really important for our gymnasts to use food for performance. And I think to also understand that, this is a time in their lives where, intuitive eating is not the most appropriate, right? And just because with an athlete, we're having to eat more on a schedule, we're having to eat a little bit more mechanically, that's not going to ruin anything. It's not going to ruin their ability down the road to listen to their body. Now, they may need to work on those skills, in life post sport. Just like in life post sport, they're going to have to learn to work out like a normal person, right? Like that's a transition that every athlete at this level has to go through is, it's not normal to work out 4 or 5, 6 hours a day. And so if you're no longer pursuing a goal that requires that, i.e., being a gymnast, like what does a healthy relationship with exercise look like as kind of a normal person, right? And life is full of these transitions. And it's okay, right? It's okay to do what we need to today. And it's also okay to transition at some other point. So here at the Gymnast Nutritionist, we have what I call an all foods fit philosophy. And again, just because all foods fit doesn't mean that we are eating all foods at all the time. And like I explained last session, I do want the majority of your gymnast diet to be nutrient dense, anti inflammatory, whole, unprocessed foods. But I'm also not dumb. And I know that most of your gymnasts need so many calories, and most of your gymnasts are behind on growth and development, or they're picky eaters, or they have sensory issues, or they have multiple food allergies, right? Like there's just a million reasons that what you might consider for yourself as a healthy diet, or what I might choose to eat, is not necessarily what would work for your gymnast at this time for optimal health, right? And so I think even when we use the word healthy eating, if I have a gymnast who's behind in growth and development, it is healthier for her to have a milkshake to get in enough calories than to have just some carrots, right? Like, if that's going to help her meet her caloric needs and allow her body to grow and develop and repair and recover and get better, faster, stronger from her training and prevent her from getting injured, that's actually the definition of health, right? And again, it would be a very probably temporary thing. But hopefully you're starting to see kind of the nuance. And if anything, I hope it gives you some permission. We also embrace kind of a philosophy called gentle nutrition, right? Where, we have a lot of nutrition knowledge, right? Like, we know about overprocessed foods, we know about, you know, different ingredients, we know about nutrient density. Like, we have all of these facts and this information, but what do we do with that? And how does that fit into our gymnast's diet, right? And so I think we balance the two, right? We look at nutrition and averages, right? Knowing that not everything is going to be A plus, but I'd much rather your gymnast, have a B plus diet where most of it's really healthy and some of it's the fun foods. I'd much rather have that she can be consistent with and that meets her needs than be A plus, but it be inadequate, or it be so restrictive that then we're F minus. And truly, I think for a lot of adults who struggle with their weight, we're either on a diet or off a diet, right? Like, we're either good or we're bad. And that just leads to weight cycling, to restricting, to binging. And all of that actually is worse for your health than just not making changes. And so the way I see this is, if your gymnast is able to eat enough, then great. Let's start working on the vegetables, right? Like, let's start working on nutrient density. Let's bring in some more fibers. If your gymnast, you know, struggles to get protein at breakfast, there's nothing wrong with using some Fairlife milk or using some Kodiak cake pancakes. At the same time, if your gymnast doesn't like the Kodiak pancakes, cool. Make regular pancakes and make sure she gets some protein with it, right? And so this can look different for different families, and every gymnast is going to be at a different spot with these concepts, just kind of depending where she is, right? With her preferences, her development, her age, her growth, and all of the things. And so it's just something that's very fluid and individualized. Other examples of applying gentle nutrition would be, choosing whole grains most of the time, right? Like, we know we need the nutrients, we know we need the fibers. At the same time, giving your gymnast something super crazy high fiber right before a meet or right before practice would not be the best choice, because fiber slows down digestion and it delays how quickly the carbs can hit the bloodstream. So from a performance perspective, that wouldn't be the optimal choice at that time. Another example of gentle nutrition would be, making sure we have fruits and veggies, right? Like, not hard, but easily overlooked. And I think a lot of families, especially this time of year, there's a lot of guilt, right? Around, oh my gosh, we're so busy. Like, we got to order pizza tonight, or we got to do takeout tonight. Or, oh, I feel guilty because I threw chicken nuggets in the air fryer and made mac and cheese. And it's like, hey, that doesn't have to be good or bad, right? Like, let's pair a salad with it. Let's cut up some apples. Let's have some carrots and ranch. Like, how can we add nutrition to help meet our needs? Another example of gentle nutrition, which would be very sport strategic and specific, would be, choosing a grilled chicken sandwich before a meat versus fried. And I touched on this Sunday night in our bonus fueling for comp season workshop, which the replay of that is posted under programs for you guys in the portal. Um, but I'm really careful how I talk about this, right? Like, I don't want someone to think that I think that French fries and chicken tenders are bad, right? Like, I'm not saying that your gymnast can't ever have that. That just might not be the best choice 30 minutes before they compete, especially if that's not something your gymnast routinely eats before she goes out and practices. Um, and I think this is where people's arguments about healthy eating falls apart. I don't know if you've ever like Googled or heard of Michael Phelps' diet. While he was swimming and winning anything and everything, there were a lot of news features that looked at his diet, and I forget the numbers. I want to say the guy needed like 12,000 plus calories a day. Like, it was an absolute insane amount of food. And the thing is, in order to get that many calories, it can't be all kale and chickpeas and salmon. Like, your stomach literally can't fit the volume and the fiber from that. I'm pretty sure he would crush like quarter pounders and fries before hitting the pool. Like the food choices he made to get enough calories was nuts, and yet he was the best in the world. And I actually think also Usain Bolt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Usain Bolt at the Olympics, like he only ate like McDonald's chicken nuggets and fries the whole time, or some other famous runner. Um, and I think part of it was just probably for the consistency of like it's the same product, it's you know what I mean? But also like if those foods were so toxic and performance degrading, then these wouldn't be the best athletes in the world, right? So again, not saying that your gymnast should only eat chicken nuggets and french fries, right? Like we would be missing out on other valuable nutrients. But it makes people's arguments kind of fall apart with this whole like magical thinking around food. So, how do you as a parent balance the two things, right? Of first and foremost, making sure your kid gets enough, but then also making sure that they're being exposed to new foods, they're learning to like healthy things, you're trying to keep the food environment as healthy as possible. Again, I think it's respecting where they're at and understanding that, a 16-year-old post-puberty gymnast who is eating enough, who has grown and developed, who has a regular period, she does not need as much as the 12-year-old who's 3 years behind in growth and is training 30 hours a week. And so their diets probably look a little bit different. And we have more wiggle room in that older gymnast diet to work on more vegetables and to work on more fibers and to work on more of that nutrient density, which will be important. Versus with that, underfueled 12-year-old training 30 hours a week behind in growth, like we don't have a lot of wiggle room, right? Like every calorie counts for that kid. And so her diet is probably going to look a lot different than most people would assume is healthy. I think respecting genetics and body diversity is a huge part of this. And understanding that your gymnast body is wise, it knows where it wants to go. And sometimes that's taller, and sometimes that's shorter, and sometimes it's thicker, and sometimes it's skinnier. And there is no one gymnast body type. And if you try to make a gymnast something that they're not, it's probably just going to result in injuries, poor performance, and definitely a dysfunctional relationship with food. And so I think that's assessing the risk, of every nutrition decision and intervention, um, especially if you're unsure. So how does diet culture get in the way of fueling in gymnastics? I think specifically there's still a lot of fear and misinformation around carbohydrate, which I'm guilty, right? It took me 10 years post sport to get over my carb phobia. Um, and I know a lot of you have been kind of working through and wrestling through that. And I know also a lot of coaches are still kind of entrenched in that. But if we truly look at the science, if we look at exercise physiology, gymnastics is a high intensity anaerobic sport that is run on carbohydrate. And your gymnast is not going to be successful on a low carb diet. I think diet culture sparks a lot of fear around growth and development and body appearance, right? Like there's still this kind of sentiment in different facets of the sport that gymnasts need to be small and they need to be light, and it's okay if they're not growing and developing. And there's also sometimes this rush of like, we have to get all of these big skills before they go through puberty. And it's like, no, the sport has changed. Like, this is no longer a little girl sport. And if you want longevity, like if you want to do college gymnastics and actually be healthy enough to do it, if you want to make senior elite and have a shot at one or two Olympic cycles, you can't be underfueled. Like that's just the bottom line. Because if you're underfueled, you can't stay healthy. And if you can't stay healthy, you're not visible. And if you're not visible, like it doesn't matter what your goals are if you're not actually out there competing. And so we're getting better, right? We're getting better. But I think especially at the top levels of sport, there's still just a lot that we need to relearn. I think there's a lot of misinformation about being heavy and slow and sluggish, right? And so, oftentimes parents will get feedback from coaches like, "Oh, I see your gymnast is grown and she's slow and she's sluggish, and maybe you need to kind of watch what she's eating." And really, it's like, no, she's grown, but we're not getting enough fuel for her body to actually adapt to the growth and to get the muscle she needs to support this new young woman body, right? And so, further restricting is not going to help our situation. Um, Ultimately, I think oftentimes it's just good intentions, right? Like we all have good intentions of trying to help support our gymnast. But if we really fast forward the tape, these things can often lead to restriction deprivation and lead to binging, sneaking, and overeating. And that's not something that we are going to participate in. I can tell you that any gymnast we've ever had who's been put on a diet or told to lose weight, it's never gone well. And they usually have actually ended up like regaining weight and gaining even more weight than they genetically would have if we had just left them alone and let them, get strong enough and fuel for what they were doing. The reality is that, over 40% of female high school athletes report some form of disordered eating. I would argue that statistic is much higher in gymnasts, gymnast, dancers, swimmers, like any sort of aesthetic sport. And gymnasts are at high risk to struggle for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's a sport of perfection. And so with that can come a lot of body critique and body awareness. Same thing with just the type A personalities that this sport attracts, often goes hand in hand with issues with food. The other reason gymnasts are at risk is chronic underfueling. And this is something that parents and coaches don't think through. But when you have these young prepubescent gymnasts who are training a ton and they're underfueled and they're not growing and they're not developing, the body is going to get its way at some point. And so often what happens is they're underfueled, underfueled, underfueled. Everyone thinks they're fine. Everyone thinks they're small genetically when they may or may not actually be. You got to look at a growth chart to know. Then they get that major injury, and then during their time off, they grow massively, all very normal and appropriate. And it's literally like 3 years of growth that the body's catching up on in a couple months. And then that's when people freak out. And then that's when people make inappropriate comments or think that they've gained too much weight, when in reality, it's like, no, it just was shocking because the growth and development that they should have steadily been doing over the last couple years didn't happen because of the underfueling. And so then that's where we can start to struggle with weight and just all sorts of stuff because people didn't understand biology. And so that can then lead to inappropriate nutrition comments, weight comments, and advice. Something I'm just always trying to work on with coaches is just helping them understand that healthy is not the same as adequate. And that really ruffles feathers, right? Because people instantly bristle up and think that I don't care about what gymnasts eat. And that's not the case. I just know, though, and it's truly science, that if you don't get enough food, it doesn't matter how healthy it is, right? Like it's not going to be enough for your body to exist as it needs to. The important thing to know is that food struggles, they don't have a look. So you can't just look at a gymnast and decide whether or not they're struggling. From a clinical perspective, like from our perspective as pediatric adolescent sports dietitians, if we have a gymnast counting, tracking everything she eats, not normal, like not appropriate, not needed, and definitely not normal. Very slippery slope to disordered eating, if not a full-blown eating disorder. And I can say that because I've been there and I've done that. Refusing to fuel appropriately. Anytime I have a gymnast that, we've been working with for a couple weeks and all of a sudden, or maybe not all of a sudden, but maybe just the whole time has been really resistant to eating enough, my spidey senses kind of go off, depending what else I know about the gymnasts of like what's holding them back. I was talking with one of the psychologists we work with yesterday, and I was like, gosh, I got a level 10 hopes kid that she's really truly just remained underfueled for the past couple years of working together. And like there's something there, right? Like there's something there. And no one's admitted it, maybe no one's even realized it, but it's truly holding her back from fueling as she needs to and staying healthy. If all of a sudden your gymnast decides that she's not going to eat what you serve or eat at friends' houses or restaurants, or is wanting to know exactly what the food's made of, or is acting really stressed about it, that could be a red flag. If your gymnast can't take a rest day without eating normally, that's a red flag. Being overly rigid can sometimes be a red flag, especially if that's like not something that is normal to them. And then if all of a sudden your gymnast announces she's not eating carbs, or she's not doing dairy, or she's going to be a vegetarian, right? Like all of those things would probably give me pause that it's probably more related to food and body versus like genuine health. And it really just comes down to the intentions. So what are the things that you need to look for as a parent? Obviously, these are the scary things that no one wants to talk about, but prevention is goes a lot further. That's all I can say. So any sort of precipitous weight change, right? Which sometimes we have disordered eating with no weight changes. I've had parents email us and based on the behavior that they describe with the gymnast, like the gymnast is very clearly struggling with disordered eating. But then the parent will be like, well, but she hasn't lost weight. And I'm like, well, here's the deal. Generally, in children and adolescents, they don't lose weight, they just stop growing and developing normally. So you can't use, weight loss as a sign that there's something wrong. If they are losing weight, it's usually something really, really wrong. Like we usually have some pretty serious restriction going on. Sudden changes in eating behaviors. So, like I just said, you know your kid, and so if all of a sudden things feel off with food, definitely something to get curious about. Same thing with changes in exercise patterns. We've had many gymnasts over the years that it started out innocently of for whatever reason they decide they need to do more conditioning, so they start going for runs, they start doing more conditioning at night, and all this stuff. And turns out like the motivations aren't pure, right? It's actually because there's some food and body struggles going on versus like genuine need for performance enhancement. Um, Constantly talking about their body, talking about hating different parts of their body, so on and so forth. Abdominal complaints, that can be a sign. Missing their period, not starting their period, irregular periods. Scary stuff like compensatory behaviors, so self-induced vomiting, laxative abuse, diuretic abuse. I actually had a gymnast, I think she just graduated, but years ago, she reached out to me on Instagram and she was an incoming freshman college gymnast at a very big D1 university. And she sent me a message on Instagram and she was like, hey, I'm so and so, and I'm addicted to diuretics and laxatives and I can't stop. Can you help me? And my heart broke because, first off, like, I don't know this girl. Secondly, like, I can't offer nutrition counseling via Instagram. And so I responded back to her, and she was over 18, and, she clearly had an eating disorder, and it started years ago because of her awful, toxic, abusive gym that she was at. The gym that she was at made the girls weigh themselves and write it down in a binder. And that started when she was like 9 years old. And then she like Googled stuff and found out about diuretics and laxatives on the internet. And somehow, when she turned 16 and got her license, was able to buy them from the grocery or wherever and hide them from her parents. And so her parents had no idea that she was struggling. We did start working together, and her freshman, sophomore years in college were super rough. And her coach, she had a great college coach that was very intuitive. And I think her coach could tell. I mean, her coach could tell just based on performance that things weren't going well. She didn't know why. And so I tried to get her connected with mental health resources. The coach had tried to. The kid didn't want to tell her parents, didn't want to tell the coach, and she ended up competing all 4 years. I wouldn't say it was to the ability that she was capable of. Um, and so it's really sad, right? Like I don't think she was pleased with how her career ended up. And I often think about her because the fact of the matter is now that she's graduated, she probably is still struggling, right? And if not struggling even more. The other sign just to be aware of would just be inappropriate use of caffeine, energy drinks, prescription medications, ADHD meds, stuff like that. Sometimes kids learn that they can use those medications and then not be hungry and then stay really skinny. So, really scary stuff that you just kind of need to keep your eyes open on as a parent. Social media has been the Wild West. In the last year, there's been this whole like skinny talk thing on TikTok, and they did try to get like certain words banned, but then, I mean, we see it all around us of what's happening with Ozempic and the GLP-1s, right? Which those medications have been around for a long time, specifically designed for people struggling with type 2 diabetes. But like Wicked's the perfect example, right? Like we have watched the two co-stars of Wicked literally waste away before our eyes, and it is just completely unethical that there are medical providers out there um, providing, these medications to people of very normal body sizes when that is not who they're for. And it really worries me, right? Like, in celebrity culture right now, we're seeing levels of malnutrition and anorexia that we haven't seen since like, gosh, I think maybe the 2000s. And I know your gymnasts are seeing it, right? Like they're seeing it at the movies, they're seeing it on social media, and we could probably have a whole nother conversation because, like, obviously, as a parent, like you have autonomy over your body and what you need to do. But what our gymnasts are seeing in culture is they're seeing unrealistic, malnourished bodies, and yet they're thinking that that is the standard and that is achievable. Um, and so it really worries me, right? Like we already have had an explosion of eating disorders in this post-COVID era. And even recently, I've gotten a lot of inquiries, and we don't take on a lot of full-blown eating disorders, just it's not really the way that our practice is set up. I refer them out to eating disorder specialists, which is usually a team approach. But yeah, all that to say, even if these things aren't happening in your home, your gymnast is being exposed to these just at school, at gym, in culture, so on and so forth. So we just have to keep our eyes open. What if your kid quits gymnastics? Well, here's the deal. Just like they will need to learn to exercise like a normal human, they may need to meet with their dietitian a few times to look at, what does their fueling need to look like now that they're not training full time. And so, once you work with us, like you're allowed to keep working with us. We often will support gymnasts through that transition, whether they're quitting completely and doing nothing, or they're transitioning to different sports that just aren't necessarily as intense or as many training hours. This is the concept of nutrition periodization, right? Like when we think about the performance plates, low, moderate, high intensity, what your gymnast needs while training a certain amount at a certain level and age, it's going to change throughout her gymnastics career. And then it certainly would change if she's injured or if she quits or if she transitions to a different sport. And so we need to be eating enough for what we're currently doing. That way, if our situation does change, we're able to be flexible, we're able to downregulate and not be stuck in a bad spot with that. And unfortunately, a lot of gymnasts never learn to fuel properly, and they continue their entire career in a calorie deficit, and so their body adapts, it slows down, and then when they quit the sport it causes a lot of just body weight dysregulation because it's been a body that's been starved, um, and unsafe, and it knows that it's not been getting enough nutrition, and we don't want that. We want a gymnast body well fueled, getting what she needs for what she's currently doing, so that if her situation does change, we can adjust things and there won't be wild swings, in growth and development. So enough with the scary stuff. How do you support body image, right? Which body image can be a huge problem with this sport. I think first off, you got to question your own beliefs about the ideal gymnast body, right? And make sure you're not projecting your own struggles onto your gymnast. The reality is that a lot of us struggle ourselves, right? A lot of former gymnasts, a lot of coaches, a lot of judges, a lot of parents, and these are normal struggles but need to be addressed. What's really interesting about body image and kind of how you see yourself is this is informed by self-esteem. And we know that, children and teens who have a lot of skills and ability, they have high self-esteem. And if you have high self-esteem, you generally have good body image. And yet, why do so many gymnasts, why does their body image stink, right? Well, a lot of it's the perfectionism, right? It's the self-criticism. And then what we call just negative body image assumptions, right? Just assuming that if they looked a certain way, they would be successful, their gymnastics would be good. Often gymnasts will pick their favorite gymnast idol and think if they just looked like so and so, their gymnastics would be better. And then a lot of times gymnasts have zero emotional maturity, right? Because the sport has just taught them to shut up and do it anyways. And so because of that, they don't have the tools. Like they don't have the tools to work through fear, to work through anxiety, to even recognize what emotions they're feeling. And so that often can turn into them coping with food and trying to control their body in some way to make themselves feel better. Positive body image is not unattainable, right? It does not have to be rah rah, I love my body. It can be what we call body neutrality. And body neutrality essentially is holding space and saying, yep, there's things I don't love about my body, but I can feed it, I can nourish it, I can respect it, and I can sit with the fact that like this is what I've been given, right? Like I literally just had this conversation tonight with a parent. This parent has a level 10 who is incredible. She's, on her way to do college gymnastics. She has actually stayed healthy. Like I have been working with this kid since level 8, so 5 years now, and she has never had a major injury. Her skills are beautiful, her power is incredible, and she has a stockier build. It's just her genetics. And this parent said that the grandparents called her out of the blue the other day and said like how big her daughter has gotten and that they're really concerned about it. And so, of course, this parent was like in tears, rightfully so. Those are such incredibly hurtful things to hear. And we just had a good conversation of like, yeah, like that's your parents' generation, right? Like completely inappropriate, unfiltered, unhinged. And, it's kind of like a therapy session for the mom. And the mom was like, yeah, I mean, I spent every day of my life growing up with my dad telling my mom she was fat. And my mom was always on a diet. And my mom was always talking about how she needed to lose 10 pounds. And, just all the same song and dance that I know a lot of you are used to. And yet, for a lot of you, you've wanted to break that cycle, right? Like, that's not the kind of parent that you want to be for your gymnast. And I was like, look, we can meet and have a session and look at your gymnast diet, but I think it's fine. You know what I mean? Like her body really hasn't changed in the last year or two since she's gone through puberty. She's healthy, she's crushing it, she's upgrading her skills. She's got strength, she's got power, she's got endurance. And the fact of the matter is her body type is not Nastilukin. Like it's just not her genetics. And so it wouldn't matter how much we starved her, like she wouldn't look like that. And if someone agreed to put her on a diet to try to make her slightly smaller, it would just backfire and result in a dysfunctional relationship with food, probably some binging, probably some speaking, increased anxiety. And then there's definitely the law of diminishing returns. And any athlete who has struggled can tell you, they go on the diet, they lose a couple pounds, they feel a little bit better, but then it all comes crashing down. And that's exactly how it works. And so this mom's got a good head on her shoulders, and she just needed someone to validate that she is doing what's right and her gymnast is fine. And people are crazy, right? Like people can be unhinged and make super inappropriate comments. And you got to keep the blinders on. So with that, there is no one gymnast body type, right? Like we don't get to choose how tall we're going to be. We don't get to choose where our body stores fat. We don't get to choose our muscle patterns. And that's okay. And that's something that you might need to wrestle with. And the reality is what you and your partner or spouse look like your kid's going to look like a combination of that, right? So like if y'all aren't, super tall, skinny, like your gymnast is not going to be super tall and skinny. But that's okay, right? Like we see gymnasts successful at the highest level in this sport with all different body shapes and sizes. And that's just the fact of the matter. So what is your role as a parent with nutrition weight? One, making sure your kid eats enough. Two, making sure that they're using performance nutrition. Three, enforcing medical team recommendations to keep them safe. And then you certainly can keep in communication with the coaches, right? Not about their diet and their weight, but just keeping in contact of how they're doing from a performance standpoint, right? And if the coach starts to say stuff like, I don't know, they're really struggling, they can't get through their routines, we've had a lot of injuries lately, like those are your red flags that we probably need to reassess fueling and growth. What's not a parent's role would be body comments, right? Like you cannot control your child's body, you cannot control your partner's body, and it never goes well, right? Like telling your gymnast that, if they lightened up on the sweets a little bit and lost a few pounds, they'd look a little bit better. It's only going to make them feel worse about themselves and probably start binging and sneaking and eating even more of those things than they were. Separating your kid, like, having dessert and letting your other children eat it, but then telling your gymnast they can't. Yeah, not appropriate. And then it's also not appropriate to give your gymnast too much autonomy too soon. Like, obviously, we want your gymnast to learn how to cook and how to fuel herself and how to make her own nutrition decisions. But what we often see in this sport is gymnasts who have been given too much independence too soon, and some really sneaky stuff can happen with food and body, or just some unintentional fueling when parents aren't um, seeing things through. And I actually have a kid right now that full ride D1 scholarship, worked with her a couple years ago. One of the best eaters I've ever met, great body image, no issues. And parent reached out to me this summer and was like, "Hey, I think something's up. I feel like I'm kind of watching her shrink before my eyes." And so I saw the kid again, and sure enough, like, don't know what happened, but this summer, first boyfriend, bikini season, going to the beach all the time, being surrounded by girls who aren't gymnasts, who aren't as muscular, and who are definitely not eating and just constantly dieting, triggered some disordered eating. And so we immediately got on it with frequent nutrition visits, got her in with an eating disorder therapist. Because I was like, look, kid, like, you have a scholarship on the line, right? Like, your body is your instrument, and it's okay to struggle, but like, we can't let this get in the way of your health, of your performance, mentally, physically. Like, it's not worth it. And luckily this kid loves gymnastics. And so that kind of gives us some leverage. And she's doing much, much better, like much, much, much better. But we're still hitting it pretty hard because she's going to go off to school next year. And that transition will bring a whole new source of stress and definitely put her at risk to relapse. And so I'm really grateful. Like, I'm really grateful that even though this gymnast is like, I don't know, 17 years old, like, her mom is still involved, and not a lot. I mean, this mom truly does let this kid do everything, almost like do everything on her own, almost to a fault. But thankfully, mom did catch it. And we have had to involve mom. And I told the gymnast, like, when we started meeting again, I was like, look, girl, we're going to give it a couple weeks working together and see if we can get back on track. But sometimes these struggles are really hard and we need more support. And so if we do need to loop mom in, it's not a failure. It just means that we temporarily need more support. And luckily, like, it's going well and she's accepting of that. And we're in a much better spot than we were. And I feel much more confident about her actually staying healthy this season. What's not the coach's role with food and weight is, well, what is the coach's role? It could be a lot of things. So I don't think it's the coaches or gym's job to provide nutrition education. It's great if they want to bring in a sports dietitian to talk to the parents, but it's okay if they don't do anything. And I think sometimes parents rely on coaches to be a dietitian and be a physical therapist and be a mental coach. And that's not their role. Like, that's not their skill set, just like it's not our skill set. I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a strength and conditioning coach. I'm not a psychologist, right? And so, I know enough to refer you to them when something pops up, which just helps kind of give you a leg up. But I'm definitely not going to try to do any of those jobs. What is a coach's role is focusing on performance and strength and not weight, shape, or size. And then if they do see something, it is appropriate to come to the parent. And I generally mean on the underfueling side of things, right? I know coaches these days are very scared to say anything. They don't want to say the right thing, at least most of them, which I can appreciate because less is more. Like, you will do less damage saying less than you will saying things that you probably shouldn't. What's not a coach's role with food and weight is providing nutrition counseling. That is illegal. That is out of their scope of practice. They are not registered dietitians. Asking gymnasts for food journals, weighing gymnasts, like, none of that is appropriate. Making comments about weight and appearance and like blaming injuries on that, not appropriate. And then, saying stupid stuff like, oh, well, her knees wouldn't hurt if she wasn't as heavy, or I'm worried about her double flipping with the weight that she's gained through puberty. Yeah, all of that is hogwash and nonsense, and they need to learn to do better. So, yes, not appropriate, and hopefully you're not at gyms where those things are being said. If you are, definitely a big red flag. We talked about this a little bit, but yeah, body comments just aren't super helpful. And part of the problem is because how you say something is not necessarily how it's heard. And parents actually get really mad at me when I say this. We live in a culture where we love to compliment bodies and compliment weight loss and compliment stuff like that. But when you have someone who's already struggling with body image, that may not hit as you intended it, right? Or you comment someone's weight loss and actually, like, they have an eating disorder, right? Or they are going through a divorce and they're not eating, right? Like, you don't know what's going on with someone. And so it's much better to keep your comments focused on non-body related things. So if you're wanting to encourage your gymnast, I want you to say stuff more like, man, you were working so hard out there today. Gosh, I can tell how good of a teammate you're being. Hey, I'm so proud of how you fought through, XYZ. all of those are much more productive comments than, wow, girl, your six pack's popping, or dang, girl, you're looking skinny today, right? Like, definitely not helpful. We talked about this a little bit, but parents, you have got to be aware of what your kid is looking at on social media. We could have a whole hour-long session about this, but I am here to tell you that eating disorder how-to information is alive and well all over Instagram and TikTok and Google and all of the things. And so, um, I can't tell you how many gymnasts that we've worked with who have struggled with food in their body and they learned this stuff on social media. And so I like it when, like, first off, young kids, like, they don't need to be on social media, period, end of story. Obviously, at some point, from a college recruiting standpoint, your gymnast may need an Instagram account. I like you involved with that. I want you to see who they're DMing. I want to see who's DMing them. I want you to be able to see what they're searching and what they're looking at. And, on TikTok and Instagram, if you go to like the For You page, it brings posts that are reminiscent of things that they've been looking at and liking and searching. And so, like, if you go to that For You page and there's all sorts of diet, skinny talk, naked bodies all over it, like, that could give you some pretty good indication that they might be struggling. The other thing is their email account. And I can't tell you how many gymnasts have emailed us from either like iCloud accounts or school accounts, telling us how they're struggling with food and body and they need help. And it's like, I can't communicate with you because you're a minor because of safe sport. What I do is I will just email them back and just say, hey, I'm sorry you're struggling. Please have a parent reach out here. Which, if the parent was monitoring said email account, they would see that their kid is struggling. And that could be absolutely life saving for them. And so, yeah, you need to have your eyes open because it is a different ball game than when I was a gymnast. When, yeah, Facebook existed, kind of, sort of, but like that was it. And at the time, there was still eating disorder content all over the internet and magazines and stuff like that. But I would say these days it's worse and it's more accessible. All right. As we wrap up, it is time to do another nutrition assessment. And this is something I encourage you to do 3 or 4 times a year. And it's not something you need to spend a lot of time on, but even just mentally stepping back or having a conversation with your gymnast and thinking through a couple things, right? How's my kid doing in the gym? How are we doing with growth and development? Where are we on the growth chart? How's their energy? How's their endurance? What are we doing from an injury perspective? How's their focus, skill progression? What are we doing prevention wise? And how's their relationship with food and body? Obviously, we talked a lot about performance plates, and I'm never going to stop saying this, but adequacy of overall fueling is first and foremost. And a lot of you are still in the thick of working on that, and that's okay. 12 weeks is not necessarily enough to fix everything, but at the same time, progress does need to be at a certain rate. And so if we have not really made progress over the past 12 weeks, we need to meet back with our dietitian. We need to start having some discussions about training hours, right? Like, we need to double down and make some changes because the longer your kid stays underfueled, the more at risk they are for injuries, the more damage is happening, and truly the longer that they're going to be kept out of the sport. Hopefully, you feel more confident with how to build snacks between meals, right? Kind of the mini meal idea, how to build pre workout snacks, inter workout nutrition. Hopefully, you guys have been inspired to do a little bit of meal prep and planning, which, again, I don't need you cooking for hours on Sunday night and putting everything in Tupperwares for the week, right? Like, that is not how I eat. But having a plan, right? Having a loose plan of, okay, what's our carb? What's our protein? Can we add some color to it? Do we have some calcium? And even just looking ahead to the week and knowing, what are the busy days? What are the days that we need to be strategic? What are the days that we need leftovers? What are the days that we need takeout? And then certainly, as we talked about last weekend in the Fueling for Comp workshop, like, you need to also be able to do this for busy competition weekends as well. Hopefully your gymnasts have a good handle on intra-workout fueling. And this will change, right? Like, this is going to change and evolve based on their age, their level, how many hours they're training. This might change from in season to summer season, especially if your gymnast trains longer. But being able to be flexible and really leveraging the power of inter-workout carbohydrate is so, so incredibly important. And I think more importantly, understanding the differences between fueling and snacking, right? And like understanding that gummy bears are a quick source of intra-workout carbohydrate. They aren't the healthiest choice, but they actually are the healthier choice when it comes to the right fuel at the right time. Granted, you don't have to do gummy bears if you don't want to. You could do banana, you do granola bar, right? Like there are infinite options for what you need to do. It just needs to be the right things at the right time. Hopefully, you guys feel more confident in understanding what underfueling is and what it looks like. And the thing about your gymnasts is they are going to continue to grow and develop and advance in this sport. They're not done. What they need nutrition wise right now is not going to be what they need in 6 or 9 months or a year. And so the good news is you don't have to be done working with us, which we'll talk more about. But I also want you to look at everything through this lens. I want you to think about performance through this lens. I want you to think about injuries through this lens. Because more than likely, if your gymnast starts to struggle again or is still struggling, this is part of our problem. 3, 4 times throughout the year, like we got to stay on top of whether or not your kid's eating enough. And again, the great thing about working with us is we'll take care of that for you. So you don't have to be a dietitian. You don't need to count her calories. Like you don't need to do those things. But obviously, for the day to day as a parent, right? Like, how are we doing with our meals? Are we missing any of the food groups? Are we eating enough of what's on our plate? How are we doing with snacks? How are we doing from a performance standpoint? Are we growing and developing? How's our relationship with food, right? Like, these are all the things that I don't need you obsessively running through this checklist every single day. But I definitely don't want you to go 6 months, right? Just letting your kid wing it and then realize like, oh gosh, they haven't grown, they haven't gained any weight. Like, no wonder we're kind of struggling in the gym, right? Like, you got to stay on top of it because their fueling is a moving target. And as I've impressed upon you guys this entire time, adequate fueling is a safety concern. And this is real uncomfortable. It's really hard as a parent to hold space and to hold the boundary when you know your kid's not getting enough, especially if that means we need to start having some conversations about reducing gym hours. Because the truth is, you have two levers. You can eat more or you can work out less. And obviously, we're going to do everything we can on the eat more perspective. But there might come a time where we do need to reduce hours in order to buy your gymnast some margin to get enough in and to get caught up and grow and develop. And here's the rub. You can make that hard choice, or your gymnast body is going to make it for you with injuries. And unfortunately, most people in this sport, they don't want to hear it. And sometimes it's the injury is a wake up call and then they finally get it. And sometimes it's not. But hopefully, you're understanding more and more that a fed body is truly your best chance at being healthy and successful and making it to the top in this sport. And sometimes the choices that you have to make as a parent are not the popular choices with your kid or your coach. But it's the loving thing to do to keep them safe, right? So, not going to talk much more about that tonight, but just know that it's worth it. It does get easier, and your gymnast will be grateful one day, right? Like she may not be super happy with you right now. But when she's still healthy and able to be in this sport, when all of her friends have quit because of injuries and setbacks and struggles, yeah, one day she'll be grateful that you stepped up. Growth charts. So, getting a height and weight on your gymnast once a year at their pediatrician visit is just not enough to know whether or not they're getting what they need. And so I think checking in probably quarterly, and letting us kind of monitor this for you, I think is incredibly important because we can catch subtle issues before they blow up into a big problem. Obviously, labs might need to be done maybe once or twice a year, maybe more frequently, maybe less. All depends on your gymnast. And we don't do labs on every gymnast, right? Like we will let you know what we recommend. We talked a lot last session about what we typically order and why. And then I know some of you have done hair tissue mineral analysis with us or you wanted more information. This is just a way for us to look at more of a long-term picture of different nutrient stores in their body. It allows us to customize minerals that give them exactly what they need versus just playing supplement roulette. And especially in gymnasts who aren't responding to iron supplements, who have a history of joint OCD, who are eating enough but are still struggling with fatigue or just really high levels of stress and depletion, all would be something that we might recommend. So, happy to answer more questions. Definitely chat with your dietitian. We don't make money off this. This is just an optional tool that we have in our toolbox that we're happy to extend to you if needed. So, what's next? You guys are formally invited to our Balanced Gymnast alumni membership. It has its own Facebook community where will join the ranks of our other alumni. We will do a monthly workshop. You'll get our monthly meal planners. You will get access to new exclusive Gymnast Nutritionist leotard launches and all sorts of other stuff. December's workshop was our Fueling for Comp workshop, which you guys got as a bonus. January is our immune health workshop, where we'll talk about kind of what you can do nutrition wise to keep your gymnasts healthier. If they do end up sick, what we can do nutrition and hydration wise to try and salvage things if it's safe. February, I'm bringing one of my favorite mental coaches, Rebecca Smith, from Complete Performance Coaching, to talk about competition nerves and pressure, which I feel like will be very timely. And to get a month free in the membership, we just want you to fill out our feedback form. And whether you want to do the membership or not, I truly value your feedback. I read all of it. I take all of it to heart. Um, I would say most of the time it's all very positive. Sometimes there's some constructive feedback. Um, and sometimes it's things we can change, and sometimes it's things we need to change. And then sometimes, there's always reasons behind why we do things how we do things. So either way, I welcome any and all feedback. I think you'll get an email today or tomorrow, and then we'll post the link in the Facebook group. And if you fill out the feedback survey, you will get an email that has the 1 month free of the membership. Monthly membership is $49.99. You can cancel at any time. You can come and go at any time. But we'd love to continue this with you, especially during comp season, right? If you want some good support and community from like-minded parents. And then a few just housekeeping details as we wrap it up. So if you've done one-on-one sessions, you can continue those as needed, right? Like we don't charge an additional program fee. There's not like a monthly fee or anything. It's just the one-on-one sessions after you're done with those initial ones. If your insurance, like we'll continue to bill your insurance. Please let us know if your insurance changes. We try to re-verify in the new year, but that's also on you to let us know. If you're cash pay, at this point in time, we just go one session at a time. And we actually have a booking link that we'll send you that just lets you pick your session and pay up front. In terms of materials, you guys have access to all these replays. So just log into the portal, go to programs, and you'll have all the replays. You've got our workbook, you've got the handouts, you've got the bonus workshops. If you need labs or you want to do HTMA or you've done it and need to redo it in a few months, just connect with your dietitian and get back on their schedule and talk through that, and you can get things ordered. And then we also invite you all to become affiliates. Word of mouth is such an incredibly important part of our business, especially being a small business, and how difficult 2025 has been just in terms of constantly changing social media algorithms and just all the craziness that we've had. And so we actually have an affiliate program, which is just a way to say thank you for you guys spreading the word and referring people to us. And so you'll see that we do like quarterly workshops or boot camps that are usually $25, $30. So if you want to be an affiliate, you can get a special link that then we pay half of that. Like we pay you 50% commission on every person that you refer. And then if you refer someone to the program, like our actual one-on-one program, we've got like a tiered commission structure where we pay cash, we offer free one-on-one sessions, like we have some pretty great perks. But I just want to say thank you. And obviously we're different than like a leotard affiliate, right? Like that's not how we work. We're a service. But I know a lot of you already are sharing your experiences with teammates and parents and stuff like that. And so I just want a way to say thank you. And so when you refer someone to the program, there's no affiliate link, there's nothing like that. You might have noticed when you apply to the program, there's just a spot to say who referred you, right? So if you've got a teammate that you've shared with about the program and they're interested, tell them just to put your name down and then make sure you apply for our affiliate program, which we're not going to turn you down. There's just some forms you need to fill out, and then we'll be able to pay you when we do our quarterly payouts. So with that, let me know if you have any questions. It can be about anything we talked about tonight. It can be anything from previous sessions. Also drop your email in the chat. and we'll do one final giveaway. I'm glad you're here. You guys are the mighty ones to finish this out. And also, congrats to those watching the replay. Um, do you want to do another leotard? Or do we want to do a big swag box that has a Yeti, that has like a full size bag of scratch, some other fun performance snacks? Um, yeah. Do we want like a mega size swag box or do we want a leotard? What do we want? And then the Fuentes family and the calls, you guys won our session 4 and 5 Leo giveaways. I mailed off Fuentes this weekend, and then calls, we just did the drawing yesterday or today. And so my team was emailing you to send you the link for your leotard. And so when I see that come through, I will get it in the mail. Swag box, leotard, swag box. Swag box. Okay. Sounds like a swag box. Forms for the affiliate program, we will send y'all an email that has a link to register for it, and then it will automatically send you what you need. So I think my team has it queued up for tomorrow. I'll double check with them. And then if you have not won a leotard, you can purchase one. We sell them at cost. And so I sent an email last weekend about them. I think I put a link in the Facebook group. There's probably still time to get it in time for Christmas. So if you want one of our gorgeous custom Sylvia Pelios, please let me know. That way, if you're planning on giving it as a gift, we can get it shipped to you. Okay, question. How do we get back on track? We were on a roll and slipped with consistent fueling. I would say one step at a time, right? You know, a really good illustration I heard of a long time ago is if you were trying to canoe across a swift river, if you just tried to canoe across it in a straight line, what would happen? The river would be so swift that you would just be pushed downstream. And so, if you're trying to swim across or canoe across a river, you have to constantly course correct, right? Like that river is going to be pushing you down, pushing you down, pushing you down in order to get across, even if it ends up being kind of on a diagonal. We have to continue to course correct. And so that's the same mindset that we want with fueling. We don't want it to be a diet. We don't want it to be on track, off track. We don't expect perfection, but I think being able to catch that getting off track and as quickly as possible, like what's the next thing that we can do to get back on track and have a win, right? Is it getting up 5 minutes earlier and having breakfast? Is it sitting down and taking 5 minutes to plan out, meals and snacks for the week? Is it pausing at dinner and saying, gosh, do we have any vegetables to put on our plate right now? Can I put some frozen broccoli in the microwave? Can I grab some carrots to put on my plate? What are some of those quick wins that you can do to try to get some of that confidence back and to get back on track? Because action begets motivation, right? A lot of us wait around to feel motivated to eat healthier or motivated to get back on track. It's actually the action that makes you feel motivated. And so I think what are the low hanging fruit things that you can do to kind of get back on track? And it might mean you need to meet back with your dietitian, right? Like, yep, let's get back in with a session. Let's be honest, we're not going to judge you. We're not the food police, right? We're not perfect either. But I think figuring out what are the barriers, right? Like, why do we fall off track? How can we make this easier? How can we refocus on our goals and how do our behaviors align with those? I think are all ways that can kind of help in that way. All right, what else? A couple more leotard votes. Okay, I'm gonna have to redo this math here. Let's see. Swag box, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 for swag. And then I think I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ooh, 7 for leotard. Okay, well, might be a surprise. Might be a surprise. Okay. Let me know if you have any other questions. We will leave the Facebook group open for probably another week or so. So feel free to post something there. Please finish out your 4 one-on-one sessions this month with your dietitian. If you've done those, you are welcome to continue. And I anticipate you'll need to continue, right? Like the goal is not to see us forever, but a lot of your gymnasts are in the thick of coming back from underfueling or they're trying to develop better habits, right? Like I don't expect perfection in 12 weeks. Like that's not realistic. And so just know that we're here and we're going to do what's best for you, right? Like when I'm working with a client, when it's been a while, like I just saw someone today and I was like, what do you need? Right? Like, here's what I think is working. Here's what I think is going well. Here's what I'm thinking in terms of support, but you tell me, right? Like, what do you think that you need to stay on track? So I like that kind of shared decision making that we do. And all I can say is just don't be a stranger, right? Like sometimes people feel like once the program's over that they've completely lost access to us, and that's not how we operate right now. Like I said, like once a client, always a client. And so I don't want you to struggle and think that you can't get back in with us. If it's not going well, I want you to reach out. Like, let's be real and honest and put it on the table and let's figure out some strategies. We might need to bring in some extra support, but whatever we need to do, let's figure it out. So, with that, I'm grateful for you all. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for entrusting us in helping support you and your gymnast. And I hope you've learned a lot. You know, there might be some things that you're still wrestling with, some things that you're still struggling with, and I think that's normal. I don't expect all of your own beliefs about food and body to just be magically changed in 12 weeks, right? Especially in just kind of the pressure cooker of an environment that we're all in. But hopefully, we're able to plant some seeds and start to make some traction and start to get some small wins that can continue through this season and next summer and for many seasons after, right? Like we're in it for the long game. We're not in it for quick fixes. And I promise that the work you put in today, it will pay off down the road. And it just might not be evident at this point. You guys are welcome. You're welcome. All right. Have an incredibly merry holiday season. Best of luck this comp season. Do not be a stranger. And I will see you guys hopefully in the membership. Bye for now.